Thank you again for being here. And we've got an agenda that we're going to roll out. We will have time at the end for questions and answers. And again, either myself or Antonio will be available to give you further information should you jump off here and think about something that you didn't ask or that you heard that just kind of popped across your screen. So I'm Cynthia Lehman. I'm an international real estate specialist and I global realtor. So I travel all over, meeting with people and living in different places. And it's always exciting to offer opportunities to different people because, as I say, you are not a tree. You can live anywhere. And Portugal has really moved up on the radar with regard to options and opportunities to live there, invest there, to be able to bring in other people. So I've been doing real estate for over 20 years, so I've got experience kind of everywhere. And it's my pleasure to introduce you to Antonio, who is my partner today, who's going to answer all of our questions with regard to Portugal. Antonio, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, as you mentioned, CIPS Realtors, well, living in Portugal for the last 24 years, past life of 28 in the US. So I am a US citizen and just living the dream, but in Portugal.
What part of
Yeah,
Portugal do you live in?
beautiful. How many of
Go ahead, Cynthia.
Antonio, what part of Portugal?
Okay. I thought we were gonna. I'm in right. Well, we have a team that goes from north to south and in between, right? Even the islands. But I'm mostly where I do have Portuguese roots, and they are up in the north, about 45 minutes, less than an hour from Porto. So I'm real
Okay.
close to the Spanish border as well, near Vigo in Spain.
Okay.
One of Portugal's best kept secrets, Ken, the Minho
Uh,
region.
you don't need to convince me. I've been there. My fiance is Portuguese. We spent 2 weeks in the Azores in the islands. We did Lisbon all the way north south, and she's like, "We are going to be here." So, hence why I'm on this call. And Cindy and I have 40 years of history. Went to school together, so it's cool to watch her bounce around. Where's Waldo? It's great. So I won't
Beautiful.
derail your presentation. I'll listen.
All right,
Beautiful.
thanks. Thank you. And we're going to save questions for the end. So what we're going to talk about today is what makes Portugal attractive, an overview of the Golden Visa, the taxation system, popular investment regions, the buying process, the healthcare system, the education system, resources and networks, and then again, questions and answers at the end. So if you guys want to type them in or if you want to write them down and ask at the end, that works either way, but we promise we will get to all of those. let's talk a little bit about what are some of the key factors that make Portugal an attractive destination for expats and investors, Antonio.
Sure. Hello, everyone. And so, Cynthia, and I can give you over 100 reasons why Portugal is attractive. I can give you over 100, but I'll probably keep it to these simple five. And I think you can add on, or anyone can add on who's visited Portugal towards the end if they like, or put it in the chat box as well as a message. But number one reason, it has to do with sunshine. Portugal has over 3,300 hours of sunshine. So if you are like the rain, okay, then maybe you have to live up north a little bit where there's a little bit more rain. But if you want a rainy country, this is not a country for you. This is a sunshine country, and with over 3,300 hours of sunshine per year. So definitely sunshine. Number two reason, Cynthia, it has to do with the people. Okay, I always say the warmth of the sunshine and the Portuguese people await you. And that's what makes Portugal different. Once you sample our gastronomy, our wines, the culture, the history that Portugal has, you'll be coming back. Okay, first time, and that's why I say most people, they come, they visit, they come back year after year, and then they do decide to make Portugal their home for that reason. Once, because it has to do mostly with the people and that make it, and it's a multicultural diversity here. Okay, Portugal's attractive as well, has to do with the cost of living and value, prices, homes, renting, going to the supermarket, everyday things. As a cost of living, quality of life is associated. Okay, without a doubt, it is, nothing is cheap in the world. I travel a lot and I visit a lot of countries in the world, and I just got back from Canada, and I can't even tell you, even from the United States, I mean, I can't even tell you how expensive things are. A bottle of wine that I take for granted, I could have a bottle of wine here for dinner, and I mean, it would, for like, if I pay anything over $30 at a restaurant, or 25 euros rather at a restaurant, that's a premium wine. Because most wines, I tell you, will cost you at a restaurant at around 12 or 15 euros, and you could probably pick one up at a supermarket, 3 euros, and that's a top one. When I'm paying 60 Canadian dollars, or I'm paying, or 80 Canadian dollars for a simple wine, I was like, wow, how expensive things are. So you won't give up any quality of life. You'll only enhance it. And that's what makes it Portugal attractive. Cheap is not the word, but affordable. It's by far one of the Western Europe's most affordable countries, by far. The easy makes Portugal's attractive because it's easy to get here. We have three major airports from the US. I mean, from the East Coast, you're about a 7 hour flight, 7 hour flight to here. And so getting here, the visa processes, okay, there's a bilateral agreement. You don't even need a visa process as a US citizen. Hey, just buy your ticket. The warmth of the sunshine and the Portuguese people await you. And I think it's fair to say, and then even somebody getting residency status is pretty easy. Getting citizenship, it's a 5 year, it's the quickest path to European citizenship after 5 years. Most countries in Europe are within a 10-year. You have to be living in that country as a resident. Portugal's only 5. Okay, so the easy processes of the visas. Why is also Portugal attractive? Has to do with the safety. Portugal is one of the safest countries in the world. Okay, so definitely visiting here, and you can, this is not an opinion, it's a fact. Global Peace Index, it's constantly rated, Portugal, by expats as one of the top countries for people to move to. Okay, and safety is one of those factors. And if you look up on the Global Peace Index, the safety is there for Portugal, and it has been consistently. And that's why it is ranked as always one of the top countries to move, invest, because of that. And again, so many other reasons. I mean, food and wine, we have it, we have it all. There's no shortage of anything. Maybe some cons as well, but we can go into them, but very few as well here, because not everything is pretty, right? Not everything is perfect, but it's perfect for me. And as you rightfully say, Cynthia, we're not trees. We can move at any time. So if you're unhappy, just move,
That's right. Lots of other places in the world. I know the other 95 because I spent some time in Porto and Madeira. So I think probably most everybody on here is has been to Portugal. So let's move on to our next question, which is a little bit of the overview of Portugal's Golden Visa program. You kind of mentioned it a little bit in one of your five, but maybe you could expand on that a bit for us.
Sure. Okay. The Golden Visa program, and you can be a dual citizenship. There's a question there, and so you can be a dual citizenship. I am a dual citizen. I have a U.S. citizenship and Portuguese. After 2011, it was permitted to have dual citizenship, but not because of Portugal, because of the U.S. Portugal, that's not an issue for you to be. It was a U.S. thing. That they permitted now to be a dual citizenship with Portugal. The Golden Visa. Golden Visa was a tool, and it's still used today, but only it was started in 2009, Cynthia. And now the only difference is that at the time you were able to use to buy a property in real estate. Today, no. Okay, the only way to use the Golden Visa, and Golden Visa is a tool to establish residency. Okay, you are permitted to live, work, play in Portugal, in the Schengen space as well, because it's just not limited to Portugal. It's within the Schengen space. Even when you come and visit Portugal on a visa, the tourist visa, it's called the Schengen visa. It allows you travel for easy travel, access-free travel to the 26 states members of the European Union. And so the Golden Visa was created to bootstart or kickstart the economy back then as well, and having foreign investors come in. Hey, you're investing in a property or a business, etc., and you're given residency status and ultimately citizenship after 5 years. As of October of this past year, they removed the real estate part of real estate or for the Golden Visa, but still kept the program because they're not going to say no to foreign investment. So any investor that wants to invest in which the government deemed critical, and that's the the economic sector rather, right? The growth of it. So investing in the farming, investing in startups, investing in many projects that have to do with companies based in Portugal. And so the government still allows it, and at the end of 5 years, investing in through investment funds. Okay, it has to be through funds, and it has to be 60% of the company have to be Portuguese owned or registered in Portugal, so based out of. And so as long as that investment goes through any sector that's based upon the economy and the growth of the country, then it is acceptable. But through a fund, and again, having that initial investment, which is 500,000 euros, but having ROI, which is paid off in dividends every single year. And then at the LOI, the length of the investment, not only the initial investment back, but also the amount that you're getting back at the appreciation value of the fund when you get out. And there are some advantages because there's like no capital gains on that. There's no property transfer taxes. There's no maintenance fees, right? There's no, when you're buying a home, you have to maintain it. You have to have a maintenance company or anything run it, etc. So you don't have those running costs. So a lot of it is, it's for the savvy investor, Cynthia. Really the person that wants, hey, I want to invest in the economy in Portugal. I want to invest in Portugal itself. I want to be able to go to Portugal or Europe anytime I want. And it is mandatory. You have to spend 7 days a year in Portugal, okay, under this program. But at the end of the 5 years, it could be a plan B. Imagine you want children. Now, we'll talk about this in just a minute about what the education system is like and even the healthcare system is like. And after 5 years, you can become a citizen. And that might be the most important thing that you can consider when using the Golden Visa, because then you'll have all the rights as a Portuguese citizen. And that is, and we'll talk about it when the time comes. There was actually a question there, but we'll get it to how's the healthcare system. So we'll get it to you, okay? And I think it was Stephanie as well. Hi, Stephanie. Yeah, she's asking a lot of great questions. So just hang tight, and then we'll get there. Okay. So that's an overview of the Golden Visa, Cynthia.
Okay. Great. So thank you very much for that one. And I can't wait to, probably by the time you're done, you'll have answered everyone's questions. So the taxation system, that's always one of those things, right? The two things you can be guaranteed of taxes and death, right? So how does Portugal's taxation system work for residents, non-residents, particularly concerning income tax and property tax?
Okay. There is no distinction between a foreigner living in Portugal and a Portuguese citizen living in Portugal. Okay. You all pay the same. We all pay the same. Even for property taxes, there's no distinction. What benefits here, if okay, our tax system is a progressive tax system, so it could go as low as a 20, well, actually, even for young adults. Now there's actually even lower taxes. It's just the new measures for the housing measures that the government have come up with, and even for housing and for a lot of measures to facilitate home ownership and taxes and everything for younger. But let's just say that on a normal tax bracket, somebody, if you're moving to Portugal, and this is only applies if you're moving here, because if you're moving here and you're living 183 days out of the year, then you have to declare yourself as a tax resident and all of your worldwide income to Portugal. Okay. The benefit is that then you are considered a resident. And so you have all the benefits of a Portuguese citizen, healthcare, education. I'll get into that in a second. But so you have all the benefits of being a citizen here. And there is a process of a residency status that you have to go through. Nothing difficult. You have to prove passive income regularly, for example. But if you are making Portugal your permanent home, then from the US, Canada, etc., many other countries, there's a treaty there's a non-dual taxation, right? So you're not going to be taxed in a foreign country and then taxed here in Portugal on your income. You're going to be taxed on where you live. You still have to report that income, but we have these bilateral agreements where you're not going to be charged twice for the tax. So that is one of the benefits, only a single tax on the country that you make it. And our progressive rate goes from as 22% to as high as 40%, okay, depending on your income. All right. And so there is benefits for taxes for somebody that has a profession that is deemed important to Portugal's growth. For example, teachers that move here, medical doctors, engineers, you name it, nurses, etc. They're deemed very critical for the growth of the Portuguese economy and Portugal itself, and they can pay only a flat tax of 20% for the life for that's what it's for the tax for anyone in those professions. But more often than not, anybody else is deemed or just a tax in that progressive tax bracket from the 22 to 40%, depending on your income. Most and average is around 28%. That's what most people are in Portugal.
Okay, very good. I'm sure we can expand a little bit on that because I've got a little experience with living outside of the country for a certain amount of days and not having to do the dual tax, which is really nice.
And
great. So that's the taxation system.
When you had mentioned about what's really cheap in taxes here, okay, is the property taxes. Okay, property taxes here are extremely low, and they're based upon the assessed value of the property by the finance department, not by the market value. So you're only paying, and it could be, for example, on a property, it's 400,000 or 500,000 euros. On that property, you will probably only pay about 800 euros a year on property tax. And so that's definitely something really affordable, a lot cheaper than probably any other countries in Europe itself.
Yeah, well, that's good to know. Good to know. So many layers to that. So with all the wonderful places that you can live in Portugal, there are some very popular investment regions. Excuse me. Can you give us some insight into some of those?
Sure, absolutely. Now I'm looking at this beautiful picture that you have here in your PowerPoint in your presentation, and it's of Aveiro. Aveiro's in the central part of Portugal, one of the most looked after cities. People do invest there as well because it's a university city. A lot of startups, incubators there, very proficient as well. And Aveiro has the river canals with these big boats, the Muliceiro boats. It would be an injustice to say that it's the Venice of Europe, what it's most likely used. People would say, but has no justice or injustice to Venice. This is Aveiro, and it's beautiful. River canals lots of history there as well. So, and it's one of the investment regions to consider, which is their up and coming areas. I always say that always look into, because Portugal is basically, you have prime investment areas where people are going to be looking to always live, move, invest, and that's the Lisbon area and the outside. Okay, that's the capital. Porto, which is the second biggest city in Portugal and very well sought after as well in the north. And then you have the coastal area of the Algarve. The Algarve is primarily for people that, hey, with the beautiful golf courses, they want to retire, live there permanently, even getting buying a property there, maybe renting it out, because there's a lot of tourism there, right? So that's the reason they're prime markets. The values there are also prime. They're higher values. And when you have up and coming regions, like for example, like in the north of Portugal, as I was saying, to Ken, is one of Portugal's best kept secrets. People don't know what they don't know. And when you find areas that are extremely affordable still, and where you can get a nice return as well, and in the future appreciation value, because it's just only one way to go, and that's up. It's to grow. Okay, so these are areas, and the Silver Coast. The Silver Coast is where where this region here, where you have this beautiful picture of the boats or that river canals. Aveiro is in the Silver Coast area. Definitely, if you can imagine the Algarve, what was 30, 40 years ago, that's probably the Silver Coast. Beautiful homes being built there, being developed, halfway between Lisbon and Porto. So you could see how close it is. And it's a big stretch of the Atlantic, right? The Algarve just has one thing, and that's probably very attractive for many investors or many people living there, and that is the sunshine, without a doubt. And of course, all the amenities, lots of resorts and golf courses. So you do have a lot going there. But when you have sand and nice weather all year round, usually the winter birds or the snowbirds or the Northern Europeans as well, British, without a doubt, Scandinavian, they do prefer those areas because of the sunshine and the sand.
Yep, I kind of like sunshine and sand myself.
Yeah.
That might be where I'll end up.
Never forget about the islands too. The Azores.
Mm.
The Azores is a combination of 9 different islands. It's close. If you're traveling from the East Coast, you can be there in 4 hours. Okay, there's direct flights. Okay, from New York, from Boston, from Newark. There's direct flights from Toronto. Even Toronto has. I was just there a few weeks ago, and like it's amazing how many. I was in the airport waiting just for a connection flight to Vancouver, Toronto to Vancouver. And I can't even tell you, there's about 3 or 4 flights that were leaving to São Miguel in the Azores. So there is. And the island of Madeira, which the Azores is probably a mix. And again, no justice or injustice, rather, to the island. It is an island, Ireland, and also Hawaii. But imagine a cross between the Ireland and the Hawaiian Islands. That's the Azore Islands. It's nature, beauty. Okay, if you're a nature lover and you don't want to be around a lot of big cities and people, definitely there for now, like everything else. And the islands of Madeira. Madeira is like the one of the most comfortable weathers all year round. Probably very little winters. It's still an island. Porto Santo as well, beautiful area. So we can never forget about the islands of Portugal, which are very interesting as well. I particularly like to go not only to Madeira, both islands, but I do have a lot of friends in Madeira that have lived there for quite some time, and it's amazing the growth that the island of Madeira has gone through in terms of not only property values but everything else, infrastructures, roads. They've really done a lot to grow the island and the infrastructures.
Yeah. All right. Very good. Thank you for that. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the buying process with regard to legal requirements and maybe associated costs as well.
Sure. Another city here. This looks like in Cascais. The picture, I'm trying to picture him out. Maybe you're quizzing me here, but I think it is in Lisbon and Cascais. There's a lot of like little, that's how small little cities there mostly are, like in the downtown areas. That's how they're cute like that. I always say they're smaller, more turn of the century homes. Some of them are 200-300 years old. So, but the buying process, it's a 3-part process. Okay, the first process, and again, real estate is probably real estate anywhere in the world in that sense, finding the property, making an offer, and that's probably where it starts, making an offer, okay, and leaving an earnest deposit. That's a simple, small little deposit that, hey, it's a sign of good faith that I'm interested in the property. Let's get all the paperwork together and move to the next phase. And before that, even then, is just obtaining your NIF number, your fiscal number, okay? And then opening up a bank account. Those are the two things that you probably should do before, and you can do that at any time. But the buying process, any lawyer, solicitor will help you with that. It's a simple process to do. Nothing. It's done in the same day. Getting the NIF number, opening up the bank account. Our lawyer, solicitor could do that. Then, okay, so and with that, doing then the second part of the buying process is the exchange of contract, and it's very simple as well. That's where it identifies, okay, where the seller is identified, the buyer is identified, the building or the property is identified. It's identified any clauses, any contingencies that you may have, like home inspection, like getting a loan, all the contingencies there will go on that contract. And it's stated, all the due diligence is done by the lawyer as well, because, property here, we don't need title insurance, Cynthia. Property here is on a database, so everything is registered. So you know who the owners are, it's there. If there's any mortgages or liens or anything on that property, it's there, it's registered. And it has to be mentioned in that exchange of contract, and it is there. And then once that's done, a down payment is given to the property owner, usually a 10% down payment. It's not held in escrow as it is in most countries, like in the US or Canada, where you have an escrow account. It goes directly to the property owner, but it's a binding agreement that then the property owner cannot sell it to somebody else. Otherwise, they have to give double the money back of the deposit that was given. Or in addition, you can force the property owner to effectively be held responsible for the amount of the deal, or make him close and sell that property because you agree to it. It's a binding agreement. It's a real serious agreement. And if the seller or the seller sells it to somebody else, that's the clauses or penalties. If the buyer walks away from the deal, then they lose the down payment. So it is something that it's a real binding agreement. And then you set a closing date to transfer title and do the deeds, and that's done in the same day. And that's the third process. Okay, it's done a day, scheduled. A notary, and the notary here is not like a notary in most countries, unless it's like, whether in Europe or even in South America. A notary here is the most person that's most responsible for any act of real estate here in Portugal. Okay, or when here in Europe for that most part. And so it's not just to recognize signatures or nothing. No, a notary here is really a well. It's the pinnacle of anyone doing property transactions responsible. Okay. And so then when you do the closing and the deeds, the transfer of the title, again, verifying the due diligence, it outlines, if it outlines, I'll get to that question, Stephanie. Okay. So I'll get to it. Or probably since we're on it now, but well, let Cynthia, either way, we'll get to it. But the notary, when they do the transfer of the property to the property owner itself, it's done simultaneously. It's registered then. And if there's a lien, for example, there's a mortgage on that property from the previous seller, obviously the mortgage, the bank that owns that mortgage is there, presents a document that releases the mortgage so it could be registered. And that's why there is no title insurance, because there's no need for it. It's a simple process, and it's done simultaneously. The minute that you sign the deeds and you've paid the balance owed, right, then automatically it can be done, the registering. And happens if seller passes away mid-process. If the seller then adheres of the property owner, okay, they have to assume their children and spouse, they assume all. Exactly, they're all protected by it. Encumbered by seller's estate. No, that is correct, because if the seller, if the seller has that agreement with the buyer, the estate of the seller is responsible to fulfill that deed, because that was his wish. Okay, in life, that's what he wanted to get done. He acknowledged it. We actually had a process there. It may just take a little bit longer to get all the necessary paperwork done. We had this actually happen to a property that we were supposed to close in, and somebody passed away, and it was actually they were living out of the country, so it was all done. Just took a little bit longer, but the heirs of the property have to accept it, or they're going to have to give the double the money back to the buyer. They can opt. They can get out of the deal two ways. Either they give if you gave them 100 grand as a deposit, the heirs could say, you know what, we're going to give 200 grand back as a double of the down payment, and that's acceptable by law too. Unless you say no, we don't want the 200 grand. We want to force them to sell us the property because that was ultimately their wish in life. Hope that answers the question. Moving forward.
Very
right?
good. Okay. Lots and lots of questions. So let's talk a little bit about the healthcare system. Tell me, what are some of the options available for expats and retirees within the system in Portugal?
Sure. And that's the advantage of being a permanent resident, Cynthia, is that then, of course, you have to live here 183 days out of the year to be considered, that's first, as a tax resident. That's how it's based upon. And once you are, then you are entitled to be part of the healthcare system, the national healthcare system, which is based upon a social network, right? And a social system. And there's a lot, for example, like every time you're assigned a primary care physician. Okay, so imagine you have a chronic illness, you need to see that physician every 6 weeks or every month or so, get medication. You also have benefits because you'll be paying on that medicine. There's a discount, extreme discounts. Like one medicine cost over 100 or 200 euros, you'll probably pay 10 euros for it, right? So there is a big discount. And that's but only being part of the national healthcare system, you do have to be a permanent resident. Okay, because anybody else, you've got to have travel insurance. If you're not living here, then you got to have some sort of insurance, and even when you travel, you take it out or so. And then also, but you're assigned a primary care physician, and every time you go see that primary care physician, you have to pay. Everybody pays. Nothing is for free. So everybody contributes to the system, and the biggest contributor, of course, is the state. Right? I mean, it's billions. It's a €1 billion budget for the system here. But everybody, if you are a permanent resident, you have the same benefits as any Portuguese citizen. So when you go see a primary care physician, or when you got to have surgery or something, you have to pay what it's called the processing fee, and it could be anywhere from, it depends on your income. It could be anywhere from 5 euros to all the way up to, I think, 13 euros or something at the max, where you go and see, and maybe you're not feeling well or whatever, you need medication, you have you break a leg or whatever it is, you go to the hospital, you would have to pay that fee, that small little, like as if you had an HMO, a co-op payment, right, or a co-payment for it, and then but that's the only cost that you have. Of course, everybody has to pay taxes at the end of the year, and that part of the taxes goes into for the budget, the state budget, but the majority goes into the healthcare system. And you also have private. Okay, sometimes we forget, and it's always good to have a private healthcare. Most people do. The difference I can tell you is that a family of four on a private healthcare system of both for medical, for vision, for example, dental, having that, a family of four will pay around 250 to 270 euros a month. So even a family of two, around 200, 225 euros a month. And that's for full coverage, private healthcare system. And if you have the private, you can have both. So sometimes the private healthcare, they work hand in hand with the healthcare system of the state, only because if there's a long waiting period, and so then you can use the private healthcare and you'll be compensated from the national healthcare system.
Very good. So it sounds like we have lots of good options there with regard to the healthcare system.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, and we will come back to those questions. If we didn't get those answered, we'll be reviewing and having open questions and answers at the end. So you did touch briefly on the education system, but let's talk a little bit about what that looks like as an expat.
Sure. The same way with the healthcare system, the University of Coimbra, nice picture. That one, hard not to tell. You can't confuse that. That's the oldest, one of the oldest universities in the world, and definitely here in Europe, without a doubt. Okay, the University of Coimbra. Coimbra was actually the first capital of Portugal. Before Lisbon was, Coimbra was the capital. The education system, the same way, if you have children and you are a permanent resident, and somebody asks here, is there a difference between a permanent residency from a citizen? Yes, of course. A permanent resident, you are when you living here in Portugal, and you're going to be requested to you have to fulfill some sort of residency status where you're given legal authorization to live, to work, to play. You can live in Portugal, to be part of the healthcare system, to use the education system, as if so you're granted citizenship only after 5 years if you stay as a resident 5 years. So those are two different things. Residency is one thing. You're given authorization as a citizen, but you only after 5 years then you can request a Portuguese citizenship, learning basic Portuguese, nothing out of this world as well. But with being a permanent resident, being a citizen, but let's talk about, because either way, because even somebody that maybe moves here, they're not a citizen, but they have residency status, and they have and it's residence, it's a temporary residence. That's maybe the distinction to be made, is that 5 years is a temporary residence status. At the end of the 5 years, you can actually opt for permanent residency, which is given for 10 years, or citizenship. If anything, go with the citizenship. It's having a second passport is something I think we've all learned that probably is good to have as a plan B. Education system is a very good reason. When you mentioned earlier before, for most of, with the golden visa, we get a lot of investors here that are looking for, long-term plans for their children, their family, grandchildren, and securing their citizenship after 5 years is one way for them to get to the university level. And the costs, for example, of the universities is not like in the US, where even my time, almost 30 years ago, or 40 years ago rather, that where you were paying 40 grand a year for university, right? No, here in a university, tuition cost can maybe be about 2,000 euros, okay, a year. And so there's no comparison. There are private schools, but the public school system is fabulous. I mean, you have so from north to south, all the municipalities. Even if you're starting at grade school, you can even have nursery school, middle school, grade school, high school. If you're living not in the city and you live in the small villages, because now all the infrastructures, Portugal spent quite a few hundreds of billions of euros in renovating their infrastructures. Okay, we're working now at the airport, getting a new airport built, but they concentrated really on just requalifying and building new schools in the cities. And so they closed out in the small villages all the small schools. So, but what they have, a bus to pick you up, your children, they pick you up, take you to school, bring you back home. And so definitely there's still that is there. But it's very proficient. I can tell you that, for example, and the sixth grade, you're already mandatory to learn English here. So without a doubt that, that's why Portugal has a very high proficiency of English here, English widely spoken. But the education system starts from daycare, nursery, right, all the way up to high school, even trade schools. Okay, so and it's equal for everybody as long as we have a great exchange student programs too, with many exchange students. They come here to study, and then they realize, what, like, I'm going to stick around for a couple more years and maybe even get married, have children, make Portugal their home. So there has quite a few stories I have of that as well. So definitely the education system here is one of the best in Europe. I can tell you that lots of straight out of university level, like top level, like medical doctors, nurses, engineers, architects, they're recruited right out of university level to go work for foreign countries or foreign governments as well, and foreign companies outside of Portugal. The ones that do stay here is because of the love of Portugal, because they can make a lot of more money outside of Portugal for sure. So we do have a lot here as well, and definitely the school system is one that's to be ranked highly in Europe.
Good to know. The higher education system is always interesting as well. So the fact that they learn English is amazing for it is easy for us to transition as an expat into a country that English is spoken. So very good.
Absolutely.
All
Absolutely.
right. So resources and networks. When you live abroad, sometimes you feel like an island. It's like, what do I do if I need something? So it sounds like easy to find networks, easy to find doctors or whoever you might need. So tell me a little bit about how that works in Portugal.
Yeah, there's quite a few, and again, most medical doctors, anywhere you go, even public buildings and stuff, there's again, English is widely spoken, so that's not going to be an issue. And there's a lot of like even you know the for example, like we've gotten there, in the Facebook has become very useful. Okay, there's a lot of groups, expats moving to Portugal, Canadians moving to Portugal, Americans moving to Portugal, etc. Foreigners living abroad. There's a lot of groups here as well. AFPOP, which is the Association for Foreign Property Owners of Portugal, etc. Even us, we have a moving to Portugal group, a community that we've set up for a lot of our clients that have moved here. And so when they're moving to a certain area, they're not going to feel alone moving into that area, you know? So there's a lot of support in that. Even your neighbors, etc. You know, you're going to have a lot of foreigners. There's over 1 million. Portugal has 11 million, well, not even 10 and a half million people living right now. I think that was the last census. So not 11 million, but let's just say between, say 11 million even. We have 1 million, over 1 million, like just a little bit over a million foreigners living in Portugal at the moment. So that's almost 10% of the country. And those numbers have grown exponentially in the last 4 or 5 years, where we had maybe 200,000 or 300,000, you know, up until 2020, 2019, etc. After COVID, I don't know. I think people realize that, you know what, like let's everybody, we're starting to move to Portugal. So the numbers have increased, and you know the infrastructures and networks for them, even you know in many places, you know, like you go, there's indications, right? People in Portuguese and English, maybe in the public buildings and everything, you have it in Portuguese and English. The websites, you know, the even the legal stuff, which sometimes, like, I mean, everything, Cynthia, you know, there's always, I say there's a good and bad and the ugly. Well, ugly there is not here. There's no ugly, but the good things we've mentioned, some of the bad things can be like in the real tedious stuff, working with the governments and the local officials, or going into finance offices, or this, all the bureaucratic stuff. That's something I still haven't gotten used to. It's just a slower pace. So if you are work, if you know, if you expect things to get done overnight, then maybe you should just breathe. As people used to say to me, slow down, Yankee, slow down. When I moved to Texas, and you know, and people used to, when I lived in Texas for a while, and you know, having that upbeat New York thing, or New Jersey, just you know, everything is just a lot more quicker, moves, etc. Yeah, it can get you ahead and do you things, and maybe in the professional world, and I'm happy for that. But sometimes you were told just slow down, relax, and that's how it is here. The lifestyle is a little bit more laid back, so you know, don't expect things overnight. So maybe just, I like to throw that in, but there is a lot of resources and networks definitely for moving here. So you don't feel alone. So you don't feel alone. I think that's probably, you need a crutch, you know, having a good realtor around as well, because, you know, Cynthia, sometimes we're not only, it's never about it never is about real estate. It's always about everything else and then real estate, right? So having somebody, your boots on the ground, for sure, without a doubt.
Definitely. All good advice. So what are the top three challenges, even working with expats and investors for a while, what are the top three challenges you see for people who are coming to Portugal?
Well, probably the biggest challenge, as I mentioned earlier before, is the bureaucratic process. It's many things have been simplified. So even opening up a company, for example, it's a lot quicker. Things have moved. We simplified. The new government as well made those much easier. Bureaucratic, getting approval on building permits, you know, etc. All these things and licensing. And so that bureaucratic process, but having a lawyer definitely, or solicitor on your side, is the way to go, because you know there's contours of the law that maybe they can go around and just get it done quicker. If you try to do it on your own, just be patient. And so, probably just also determining where to really get to know the area, the investment that you're going to make, and where it is. For example, like if you're buying a property and you're going to be wanting to use it for Airbnb, renting it out, make sure that it is permitted within the homeowner association, little things like that. Again, but those are things that probably those are common anywhere you go in the world, and you're looking at to do that investment, to do the due diligence. Okay, having market studies done, etc., having the right people around you. Having, I always say, you got to have a team. Always, even having a good a currency exchange broker. People sometimes forget about. They're transferring large sums of money, and there's fluctuation in the rates. Those are some challenges. You know what? If you can find and you work with the currency exchange broker, locking in until you're ready to buy, it can be the main. It can mean saving, on 100,000 euros or dollars or whatever, 10%, so 10,000. For example, right off the bat. Why? Because currency exchanges are here. We work in euro. Okay, so having the dollar or Canadian or US or whatever currency, having that where it's close or parity, that parity we had it, but in August of 2022, 2 years ago, and maybe it's getting close to there now. So having a currency exchange broker can mean saving a lot of money. So that's definitely some advice I would give to anybody. Having a legal representative, the realtor to start with, right? But having then the legal representative, the currency exchange broker, even a good insurance broker as well, having a team. And that's what we do. I mean, when we have a relocation service too, Cynthia. So this is something that we do. We're more interested in helping people move here, finding, even renting. You don't have to buy a property if you want to live here. For an investor, of course, that's a different situation. But if you wanted to move here, I would recommend renting a property out for at least a year. It'll fulfill the residency requirement in one of the most easiest visa process. That's called the passive income visa, otherwise known as the D7 visa, because it's based upon income that you have earning passively. We have other visas for like digital nomads, etc. In same way you have entrepreneurial visas. Okay, the golden visa is one of them we talked about earlier. So there's a lot of visa process. The one that's mostly used, the D7 visa, having you're going to need insurance as well and a few other aspects and things, but we provide that service of getting people here, and then that way they can figure out where they're going to live, because we have people that move here that have never set foot in Portugal, and so guiding them through, working with them on a Google map and figuring out the best community, where the schools, etc. So it's very important. That makes it challenging if you're moving with younger children, and school is important, figuring out the school. So those are some of the challenges, but definitely we help people all the time relocating. Again, most often than not, our real estate, our business has very little to do with selling homes and buying homes. It's mostly helping people getting moved, relocated, because then it's just simple. Like, okay, you found, it's the where, the why, the when, and the how much. And once you have those four things in place, until you figure out yourself where, why, when, and how much your budget is, and where you want to go and live, then we can work with that, and it's real simple. But until then, that is the main challenge for expats, finding out where am I going to live, because I don't know Portugal. Maybe, you know what, the weather, how's the weather? That's the most important factors. So those are some of the other challenges for expats, really, is weird living in Portugal, but we can help them. Again, I've been here 24 years living, so from north up and down, we have a team, and then one of our team members will be working with someone that you'll be referring from here for sure, like Ken in the Azores, etc. So definitely, this is what we were in. We're in the referral business, and then helping them figure out where it is, and take them from there. Again, as a crutch, renting a property first. My biggest suggestion, Cynthia, to anyone, unless you've been to Portugal a dozen times, you know exactly here. Tony, this is where I want to live because of this, because again, where, why, when, then you figure out the time. Work 6 months back from, you're going to move to, I want to move in June of 2025. Okay, then we need to start this sometime around January, February, or even December, January. start the process, because then maybe enrolling your schools and your children in school, this, that, these are some of the things that we go through all the time. So we work with that, with the relocation service. It's just not real estate, Cynthia.
Yes, I get that. And that's why we're holding this, because you and I both love Portugal, and to be able to share it with everybody is great. So thank you for that. And now I think we're going to open it up to the questions, and I'm going to go down through the list. And it looks like probably that you've answered a lot of that. I don't even know. Mine isn't showing. Maybe you can pull them up, Tony, because I can't open the questions.
Yeah, I think I went through them all. There was one
Okay.
that had to do with again, from the residency and citizenship. I've answered that. Dual citizenship. Yes, you can have dual citizenship in Portugal. It is permitted. Well, dependent from the U.S. and Canada. Yes, if any other countries, I'll have to consult, because that, from experience, I could tell you as a U.S. citizen, when I moved here, I wasn't born in Port. I wasn't born in the U.S. I was born in Angola. Actually, it wasn't even in Portugal. Okay, I was born in Angola, in Africa. And so when we moved to the United States, and then I was naturalized as a U.S. citizen, you have to give up all allegiance and nationalities to any other country other than the U.S. You're a U.S. citizen. That's it. You can't have dual citizenship with the U.S. It just wasn't permitted. Up until 2011, it was. Now it is permitted, and that's when I got my Portuguese citizenship as well. So yeah, you can have dual citizenship, U.S. and Canada. I think, Stephanie, that you're probably friends of Cynthia, so without a doubt, you can have it. Healthcare in Portugal. Can one obtain healthcare within the 5 years before becoming a citizen? Of course, you have to be a permanent citizen, Stephanie. Okay, that's the distinction. A permanent citizen, or a permanent resident, or a residency status, not even a permanent residency. You got to have a legal resident. Same way if you're in the U.S. and you have to have a green card, for example. Well, here you have to have a residency and that status, and it is valid. You have to renew it the first time. The first you issued a little card. It's kind of like a green card, except it's blue here, and so has your name, and then it also has your social security number. It has your healthcare number. It has all the numbers and services. So once you are a legal resident, and it's a two-step process. It starts outside of the U.S. For example, if you're living in Florida, you would have to go through the consulate services in D.C. If you're living on the West Coast, you have to go through the consulate services in San Francisco. If you're living in Wisconsin, you have to go through no, Wisconsin, you have to go through also DC. If you're living in Maine or Massachusetts, then New York. There's also Newark. So there's wherever state you are and you're going through apply for that residency status for whatever visa is most appropriate for you. Again, there's quite a few. The first 6 months or first year, it's mandatory to have your private health care. You from the government, whether you get it from a U.S. provider or Portuguese provider, you got to have private healthcare for that first year, or one, and then once, because why? Because it may take for you to become a legal resident here after the first interview, etc. It probably won't take a year, but at least 6 months. So if you take out that private healthcare, then once you are a legal resident, then you can cancel the private healthcare and apply for the healthcare system. No escrow, yes, no escrow. I think I explained that as well, but just to recap on it, no escrow account, whatever is assumed or by the here or by the property owner in life, the here's it's built into the law that they have to respect that contract. That's the wish of the property owner. He passed away, but their here's, their wife, their children, they all have to acknowledge if they want to get out of the deal, then they have to cancel, and that would be the same way for the buyer. They would have to give them either double the money back, or the buyer would say, no, we don't want double the money back, we want the home. Then they can force them to sell the home because that was their wish, and that's something that. But again, just remember that if the seller has that obligation and that commitment, the buyer, if he walks or she walks away, then they lose their down payment. So it's very seriously taken, that that amount, because it is given, that deposit is given directly to the property owner. It never goes into an escrow account. We've had deals that We've had it held in escrow just because we knew that it would take a while before we'd close on the property. So because of they had to rectify some areas, maybe the areas weren't correct, maybe they added on a building to the house and it wasn't registered, so it had to get all these things, and it would take a little longer than 30 days. Because usually a closing from when you do the exchange of contract to the actual deed could take mostly 30, 60 days. Okay, but sometimes it could be 6 months because the property owner, I'm only going to sell the house because I need to find a new house, or I'm finishing building my old house or my new house rather, or somewhere, and I'm not going to live under a bridge, so he won't sell the house or leave it for a longer period of time. So hope that answers that question. Oh, and I didn't answer this one. This one is from Lynette Larson. Okay, what is the best website to begin viewing properties? It's called Cynthia Lehman website, that even for Portugal properties, that she'll get to you. No, we don't have an MLS system here in Portugal, the multiple listen system. So what you're going to have to do, work with a professional. And if you, Lynette, definitely reach out to Cynthia. If there's certain properties, again, I would worry about where first and why and when, and then how much, of course, and not so much on the property, okay? Because, if you're looking at a property today, it's probably not going to be even on the market. So where, why, when, how much? Those are the things, and working with the professional. If you wanted to go, there are websites, they're portals, okay? They're not MLS sites, okay? They're property portals. They're not too reliable. You're going to find probably the same property portals that we don't use, similar to your Open Doors and your Zillows and everything else, but with one big difference. You're going to probably see the same property listed by 10 different brokers, 10 different prices. It is scary. So definitely work with the professional. There's the reliable sites as well that we work with. And don't get me wrong, we do a lot of deals as an MLS. We split between a buyer agent and a listing agent. We do that here, of course. But we work more directly with that listing agent. If you're working, there's all the brands here in Portugal, whether you have your Caldwell Bankers, your Century 21s, your Remaxes, your Eras, your Christie's, we have them all the big franchises. So looking on their sites, that is a suggestion as well. Most of them do. When you go on the Century website, for example, Century 21, you can look at international properties and where. But to start, you could start from there. I mean, if you want, I can put one in the chat box here. Would you like me to, Cynthia, put one here in the chat box? Or I'll send,
Sure.
reach out, or Lynette, reach out to Cynthia. She'll provide that information for you. I think you're recording this and any of the questions, and then she'll follow up with me as well. And then that way you could send out an email instead of just sending it here and typing it in. And then, but it's real simple, and it's your Idealistas or your Imo Virtuals. Those are property portals. Your Super Casa. Those are probably the three top or whatever. I even myself, I look on there to see, okay, maybe this property, but I'll call the listing agent directly to make sure. And then working, of course, here we have working as a buyer agent representative, the same way as in US, having for us, anybody to work with us, Cynthia, you got to have the buyer agent commitment and the contract signed. Otherwise, I'm not sending you anything. Don't ask me for nothing because I'm not sending it to you. I'll say, Google it. You want information? Google it, because it's just the way it is. We have so many people that are in need of our value to be added in their transaction that we don't have time to waste. I don't have time to waste. So, and I'm sure you are the same way, Cynthia. People really that are committed to working with you, they're going to be responsible and sign a commitment. You got to have a commitment. Otherwise, nobody's going to give you information for free. That's just the way I see it. Nothing is for free in this world. And so having that relationship, if right now, if you're thinking of moving here, investing here, you know what? You have somebody that you can trust. Cynthia, reach out to her for sure. And then that way we can set up a Zoom call, Cynthia, at any time with anyone particularly, and to go over any one of these things. Okay. But we'll get those. Let me see if there's any other questions here. I don't think so, right, Cynthia?
Yeah, I have Tony, I have a question for you.
Sure.
With regard to, can you get a loan as an expat? Can I get a loan to purchase a property in Portugal?
Yes, you can. And we do, and we even most people, it's cash deals. About 90%, 95% of foreigners that buy in Portugal is cash deals. Okay, they've sold an asset or something, they have money saved up or whatever it is, and they want to use it. They don't want to have a mortgage. But I say to them, leverage it. Interest rates here are still cheap. okay, were lower. Well, they used to be even cheaper a few years ago, but after this inflation, everything in the last 2 years, everything's just gone out. But we're still looking at like now at around 5.25%. You can go, the difference is here, loans, it's based upon residency status. Okay, so if you're a foreigner, there's one thing. You can get up to 40% of you need 40% of your capital. You're going to get a 60% LTV, the loan to value ratio, right? So if the property is worth 100,000, the bank will give you 60,000, you will need 40,000 of your own capital. Okay. And I always say to anybody, you know what, like even if you have the 40,000, leverage it, or you have the 100,000, leverage the 60,000, use only 40% of it. And it goes up to it goes up to the age limit. So there is a age limit on the mortgage, which is 75 years old. So if you're 65, then you can only get a 10-year loan. It's just the way it works with the banks in here, up to 75 years of age, the maximum. But it is possible. Anyone that's imagine you're living here in Portugal, as a foreigner, okay, you rent the property for a year, you're living, then maybe you want to get a normal mortgage, just like any Portuguese citizen, but it's based upon residency. So you fulfilled 183 days living in Portugal, because that's when you're considered a resident here, a permanent resident, or a tax fiscal resident. And then you can qualify for a 90% LTV. Most loans here are 90% of the value. People need 10% down payment, usually first-time home buyers. If they're 30 years old, hey, they can get a 45-year loan. It's just that simple. But otherwise, for foreigners, and that's more specific to your question, 60% LTV, loan to value, you need 40% of your own capital.
Yeah, it was similar to that when I was in Panama as well. So they had the 75-year age limit as well. So interesting. I guess we just rent for those 183 days until we get our residency, and then we find out where we want to be, right? So lots of really good information. I do have just a couple things to add in there, but I want to make sure we've answered everybody's questions. I don't see any more typed in. Does anybody have anything they just thought of they'd like to ask Tony? Again, this will be recorded. I'll get the link out to you. I appreciate everybody being here. It's been a lot of fun, very informative. And, we will definitely follow up for those of you who are interested in learning a little bit more, getting boots on the ground. Tony does, as you heard, he's an excellent resource, and he has an experience in Portugal coming up June 2nd to the 9th, which is, of course, just around the corner. And you told me that's filled. So we'll be looking for the next one, which is maybe, it's tentative yet, but September 14th to the 22nd. So if anybody wants to go, hang out with you for a week, kind of check out the culture, the language, the different areas that you could possibly invest in, come back to me and we can connect you. We'll look at that. I'm thinking maybe I want to go to the 14th to the 22nd. That'd be fun. How about it, Trey, Lynette? You guys all want to come with me? Stephanie, we'll do a week away. And the thing I loved most about Portugal was I could drink some green wine for like $4 a bottle. It was so good. I don't know if any of you guys have tasted that, but it's almost effervescent. It had a really fresh taste to it. It was great. So yeah, loved the wine there. Oh, looks like we have a couple more questions.
Yeah, the green wine is it's still not mature. It's still like a young wine, so that's why it's effervescent. It's red or white, and it's a great wine especially for summer drinking when it's nice and cold, salads and fish and even aperitifs and stuff. So it's in the north of Portugal. And why is it green? Because green here, in the northern, it does rain a little more than anywhere else in Portugal, right? So that's why you have everything lush and green. And so the green wine is something here in the Minho region, that where it comes from. And when you talk about it's the Portugal Experience Tour, yes, we're having from June 2nd to the 9th, and that one's we've been closed out on that event. We have 18 not only buyers, investors, realtors come that also want to participate, get to know real estate opportunities. We meet with developers, we meet with the builders, we meet with legal counsel. Everything you're doing here, right? We're talking about Portugal, learning about Portugal, the buying process. But imagine a week long of the experience of then the food. Everything's included, right? The food, the wine. We'll go to visit some palatial homes, wine tastings as well. Meet with even local officials. Okay, um, do historic visits as well. Do even the one in September. We're planning on doing a boat ride in the Douro River as well. So that's something we try to change it up a little bit every year and introducing to markets that are also growing. Which isn't like here in the north. And then you could come out for a week with us, and if you want to stay longer, then happy to help you with an itinerary to visit the rest of Lisbon or the Algarve, and discover even visit properties there, etc. So definitely, it's a week-long experience. I'll have more details, and then Cynthia can share with you. And yeah, we have the tentative dates. We'll be releasing it probably in the next month or so, and we allow only maximum 20 people. This year we have 18 because we have to close it out like a week before, actually 2 weeks before the event starts, right? So we have everything set up. So, but we allow maximum 20 friends, guests, because otherwise it's a logistic nightmare. You know what I mean? So anybody that does want to participate and learn about Portugal, and then visit. We concentrate on the north part of Portugal in the Minho, and then happily to set up other mini tours or mini events for anyone else that wants to stay longer. Most people do stay longer just because, but the ones that they come and visit and they want to experience is the northern part of Portugal, because definitely it's a lot cheaper, everything more, if it's a lot cheaper even within Portugal, everything. When you talk about that 4 euro bottle of wine of the Vinho Verde, you're absolutely right, Cynthia. I mean, it is extremely affordable. There was two questions here. Do you help with finding rentals? Yes, we do, Stephanie. That is our biggest priority is doing and finding rentals for somebody to fulfill one basic and it's very important requirement. That is, you need a address when applying for residency status. You got to have an address, and so that's why I say work 6 months back from the date that you're trying, because it's all about timings. Then so that way we can time when you have the appointment in the consulate services. We can time when the visa is going to be approved. So then you're not paying for the rental over a period of time without and not using it. Okay, so everything is about timing, saving money, and that's something we do. We have a relocation service, and it's a fee that we have as well for that. But definitely, we do help finding rentals. Tony's contact, Tracy Johnson. Here's definitely Cynthia. You want to reach out to Tracy, share my contact information. Happy to get a referral from you from here, my dear. And so if she's interested in moving here or looking at Portugal, first you having that contact, that first initial conversation with Tracy, and then happy to take on your referral if she's eventually thinking of moving here, even getting on a Zoom call with her.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, so I think we're going to wrap it up. We're over our hour, but lots of exciting things to talk about. And again, I appreciate everybody jumping on. So we're just going to talk a little bit about, what did we talk about today? What makes Portugal attractive? The overview of the golden visa, the taxation system, popular investment regions, the buying process, the healthcare system, the education system. We talked about resources and networks, and definitely, Tony, you are a definite big resource for us. And then we did some questions and answers. So again, I want to thank you guys. And if you want more information, this is my email, cynthia@lehmanteam.com. Please reach out to me. I do have you registered for the Zoom call, so I do have your information, and I will get you the link once we get it up and sorted within the next couple of days. You can rewatch that, or go back and look at some of the things that maybe you were thinking about something else like me. I'm like, okay, now one thought triggers another, and it's like, now I'm really excited to come back to Portugal. So thank you again. And does anybody have any last minute questions before we end the session? Nope, we're all good. All right, great to see everybody. Thank you, Tony. Looking forward to seeing everybody soon. All right.
And
Ciao.
I'll leave you with this thought, Cynthia, if it's okay. Portugal, don't come if you don't want to fall in love. So thank you, Cynthia.
Very good. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.